My mother with my siblings and I moved into this awesome new house a few months ago. It's a really cool plantation-style home out in what was once a rural area outside of New Orleans. By now the area is a little more built up, so it's really more like a spacious suburb. Anyway, it had been about 9 months since our father died. My mom really wanted us to get away from our old house. It was full of too many memories. She wanted us to have a cool, spacious house to play in and give us a fresh start. Apparently we got this place at a decent deal because the former owner was this old woman who passed away and her family wanted to get the extra house off their hands. She died peacefully in her sleep, but it still made us a little uncomfortable, so no one moved into her bedroom. We just let it be a guest room if anyone had visitors. We have a wonderful neighbor named Miss Leah who lives next door to us, about a half-mile away. She's a small but powerfully built woman who welcomed us to the area with open arms. The former owner of the house was an old friend of hers who she visited all the time, and my own mother soon took on the role of her new friend. They immediately became best friends, always giggling in our kitchen on the weekends. Miss Leah loves telling tales of voodoo and even practices it herself. Many people in New Orleans do. She mostly practices the light voodoo, like charms for good luck and protection. She told me that you can talk to spirits if you write them letters and put them in a place where they know to find them. I started seeing her every now and then, late at night when I can't sleep, sticking envelopes into our mailbox. I can see it from my window. When I'd go out in the morning, though, no envelopes would be there. One night I saw her doing the usual mailbox routine, and as soon as she walked far enough away, I ran out to see what she was putting in our mailboxes. I saw a little, silvery, unaddressed letter to Maggie, which turns out to be the name of the old lady who lived in our house before us. I always thought Miss Leah was joking about talking to the dead, but it's clear she practices it herself. Just to test things out, I stood at that mailbox, watching it for a few hours. Eventually, the sun began to break over the horizon, so I figured I had waited ample time. I opened the mailbox. The letter was gone. At first I was in complete disbelief, but then I was overcome with excitement. If Miss Leah could talk to Maggie, maybe I could talk to my dad. I keep a little shoebox under my own bed. It's full of little trinkets and pictures that remind me of my dad. I go through it every now and then, when I miss him most, as a sort of therapy. A few nights after trying to rationalize what had happened with the note to Maggie, I decided the best way to test it out was to try it myself. I wrote a letter to my dad, which felt silly at first because I don't know what dead people like to talk about. I wrote, "Dear Daddy, miss you. How are things on the other side? Mom bought this cool house for us, and we have a fun neighbor lady named Miss Leah. We're all doing okay over here, but I especially miss waking up every morning to the sounds of your loud singing in the shower. I hated it back then, but now I realize how funny and charming it was. Sincerely, Julia." I placed the note into my special shoebox and slipped it back under the bed. When I woke up in the morning, it wasn't there. I wasn't sure how to handle it. Did he really get the message? Does he write back? What do I do now? Well, I still needed to go to school that day, so the excitement of my supernatural letter writing subsided and I headed over to the bathroom to get ready. My older brother was singing his lungs out in the shower, something unusual for him, but I figured he was trying to become more like our dad. I knocked on the door. "Hurry up in there. I need to pee." The singing continued. "Jay, how much longer are you going to take?" The singing continued. Then someone tapped on my shoulder. I turned around. It was Jay. He said, "Calm down, Julia. I'm not in the bathroom. Is the door locked? Let me see if I can jimmy it open for you." He opened the door with ease. The bathroom was empty. No singing. The shower wasn't running, but the tub was wet. I walked in and started brushing my teeth, amused by what had just happened. I noticed the mirror was a little bit foggy, as though from shower steam. There was a message written in the mirror. It said, "How bad do you miss me?" I walked the fine line between being totally freaked out and super elated that my dad was communicating with me. I wrote another letter that night. "Haha, I miss you more than you can possibly imagine, Daddy. Don't ever doubt that. But tell me, how are things on the other side?" That morning I woke up. The letter in the shoebox was gone, but I noticed a new letter near my door. It looked like someone slipped it under there. I opened it up. It said, "What do you want most from me?" I found it weird that my dad wasn't really carrying the conversation well, but I decided I'd write a quick response and go to school. I wrote, "Well, I guess what I want most is for you to come back and play with me like old times. But I know that's silly." When I got back from school, I went straight to my room to check on the letter. I opened my door and my dollhouse, which we stored in the attic, was smack in the middle of my floor. My mom had been at work all day, my brother was still at swim practice, and my sister went to the mall with her friend after dropping me off at home. I don't know who could have moved it, except maybe my dad. I saw a note next to the dollhouse. It said, "Play with me." My body froze. Something was unsettling about this whole setup. I didn't feel like I was in danger or anything, but I just wasn't comfortable. I walked to Miss Leah's house and she was sitting in her rocking chair on the front porch with her cat, Rufus, in her lap. I told her I knew about the letters she wrote to Maggie. "Ah yes, sweetheart," she said. "Even though she's passed, I haven't stopped talking to Miss Maggie one bit. She's was my best friend, and I want her to know how much I love her and how much Rufus misses the little tuna treats she'd give him. I write her almost every day, just updating her on my life so that when I pass, too, it'll be like she didn't miss a beat." She asked me if I was thinking about writing to the dead, too. For some reason I didn't feel comfortable telling Miss Leah that I had been writing to my dad already. I told her I was considering writing a letter to my dad and that I would try it out that night. She laughed, "Okay honey. You'll have to let me know how it goes tomorrow." I played with Rufus for a little while as Miss Leah talked on the phone with her nephew. The sun started going down and I figured it was about time for dinner, so I said goodbye to Miss Leah and Rufus and walked back over to my home. My mom and everyone else were already back. "My God, where have you been?" my mom yelled. I told her I was hanging out with Miss Leah, which eased her nerves a little bit since she knew I had been home alone for a while, which scared her. My sister was grounded for abandoning me for the afternoon, but she said it was smart for me to go to Miss Leah's. She then said, "You know that dollhouse was expensive, right?" Which seemed like an odd question, but I answered, "Yes. I suppose." "Why?" And she explained, "Well, I guess I just wish she'd taken better care of it, is all. I saw it in your room when I was looking for you and I could see you picked off all its paint and there were some dings and dents and I just thought it was such a shame. Also, next time you're getting something from the attic, wait until I get home and I can help you, honey." Bewildered by my mother's comment, I ate dinner in silence. Afterwards, I helped with the dishes and made my way back to my room with apprehension. It seemed like the dollhouse was in great condition last I saw, so I knew something must have happened after I left. I prayed my mom was just seeing things, that the dollhouse was, indeed, exactly how I left it. I opened my door. My mom was wrong. The dollhouse wasn't a little dinged up. It had been ripped to bits. Its tattered remains were strewn about the floor. Even my little dolls were mangled with their arms snapped backwards and their heads missing. I couldn't fathom what had just happened. Then I saw the ladder. "Why won't you play with me?" My hair stood on end. I could feel the rage emanating throughout the room. I tried to rationalize. I tried to tell myself that the context made me sense rage, but there was nothing to worry about. But how can you rationalize things when you're going around writing letters to dead people who break your furniture? I felt terrible that I had upset my father this way. He bought me that dollhouse himself, so it must have hurt to destroy it. I immediately wrote a new letter to my dad saying, "Daddy, I'm so sorry for not playing with you. I love you, but I think we need to let go. You belong on the other side and I belong here. I just want to say one more thing to you. Something I never got the chance to say before. Goodbye, Daddy. Julia." I slept with my brother that night. He was nice about it, didn't even ask what I was afraid of. He could tell I was disturbed and he didn't want to push me. Before we went to bed, he did say one thing. "You know there's no such thing as monsters, right?" "Yes," I whispered. At that point I wasn't sure if I was lying or not. It was still comforting to say it. I didn't think I was dealing with a monster, or at least I wasn't sure about it. I didn't even really know what a monster was supposed to be. A dragon? A boogeyman in your closet? An angry father? The next day was Saturday, and I still wasn't comfortable being in my room for long. I got dressed and walked to Miss Leah's. I wanted to leave the house without checking the shoebox. It felt like I was leaving an angry parent, and wanted to give them time to cool off before we talked again. Miss Leah was sitting with Rufus, as usual, and they both watched the blue jays hop around in their yard, Rufus slightly more attentive than Miss Leah. "Well, hey there, sweetheart," Miss Leah called out. "How'd it go last night?" I knew she was talking about the letter, and I knew she'd know exactly how to fix things. But before I could begin speaking, she interrupted. "Let me guess, it didn't work." "Why would you say that?" I asked. "Because I know better than anyone else that spirits can't move physical objects. I have to use my special charm paper to write to Maggie, and I doubt you got any charm paper." I felt a little ashamed after that. I'm not sure why. I guess I just felt like I'd been deceiving Miss Leah. I didn't tell her the whole story. I just told her I thought it worked because the letter was gone. "Well, Julia, my best guess is you've got a prankster in your house. Probably your brother, he's too silly for his age." She went on about all the things she's told Maggie. She said it didn't happen often, as it was hard for Maggie's frail little spirit to do much of anything except read, but Maggie would sometimes write back. Maggie said she hadn't crossed over yet, but when she did cross over, she wouldn't be able to get letters anymore. Maggie said that she loved Miss Leah and her letters, but one day, she'd need to move one. She said eventually, Miss Leah wouldn't have the strength to write letters and they would become fewer and fewer. Once Maggie knew it was too hard for Miss Leah to write anymore, she'd cross over and wait patiently with Petunia, another one of Miss Leah's cats who had passed away. Maggie said Miss Leah would know when she crossed over because her letters would stay in the mailbox, and no one would take them. I wandered home later that afternoon wondering if my dad was ever going to cross over. I wasn't sure how to feel. I know what I saw and what I did. I wrote letters to my dad. I left them where he'd check our box. They were gone later. I heard him in the shower. I saw his message in the mirror. I saw the dollhouse and his notes. I know no one in the house could have moved the dollhouse. I was certain it was Daddy. I arrived in my room, fragments of the dollhouse still scattered about the floor. I remembered the last letter I wrote. The one that asked my dad to move on. I was afraid he'd be angry with me. I was afraid he'd accuse me of not loving him enough, of lying to him. I didn't want to check the box, but I needed to see if he got the message. I opened it. The letter was gone. But in its place was a new letter. It said Julia on the cover, so I knew it was for me. I figured he wrote back. I opened it. And I was horrified at what I saw. Daddy isn't here. I bolted down the stairs and prepared to run back to Miss Leah's and explain everything. But I didn't have to. There she was, giggling with my mom in the kitchen. I started walking toward them, but there was something on the other side of the division between the kitchen and living room where I could still see it, but Mom and Miss Leah couldn't. We put a framed picture of Dad there in order to remember him. There was a note on the picture. It said, "Say a word and they're dead." I wasn't sure what to do. I knew I needed to keep quiet, but I also knew that something very, very sinister was going on. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. My sister and brother were going to a big house party, and my mom wanted to go hang out with her girlfriends that night, so Miss Leah actually came over to take me to her house for the night. My mom tried to apologize for the late notice, but I was so excited to get out of the house and away from whatever it was, that she didn't even get to finish her apology. That night, Miss Leah let me stay up late with her and Rufus. At around 12 a.m. she started writing a letter on her special charm paper. It was very thin, and glowed a silvery hue. I asked her how to make it and she said that it comes from the soul. We walked to my house together and put the letter in the mailbox. The next day, my mom picked me up and we stopped by the mailbox because someone had pulled the lever up. There was a note for Miss Leah there, and I knew exactly whom it was from. The paper had that same thinness and silvery glow. Mom wrote it off as someone dropping it off in the wrong box and asked if I would run back and give it to Miss Leah. I sprinted down the street to Miss Leah's. She opened the letter and began reading while I sat and waited with Rufus. When she was done, Miss Leah's face turned pale. I never thought I'd see such a white, porcelain complexion on a live human being. All the color was gone from her face and she trembled. She was clearly disturbed. Very disturbed. She told me not to go home, that she'd call my mom and everyone would come over for lunch. She immediately put down the letter and picked up her phone. Once her back was turned, I took the letter to read it. Dearest Leah, so sorry I've taken such a long time to write back to you. It seems that I lack the spiritual power necessary to write. Heck! I could hardly even write when I was alive and had hands. The lady who moved into my old house with her family is lovely as ever, and I want you to know that I've been watching y'all's friendship and I'm so happy for you. I miss giggling in the kitchen with you, but watching you and her talk is almost as good. I'll bet you met all her children as well. Most of them are sweet as can be. Jay has a heart of gold and seems to really care for the family. Catherine has a great sense of humor. Always makes me and the rest of the family laugh. Julia is a curious little one. She reminds me a bit of you. Then there's the fourth child. It's a vicious little thing. You know the one I'm talking about? The one with the black eyes and the long, dark claws that lives in my old room? It's always causing a ruckus. I'm glad I'm dead because that little scoundrel really gives me the creeps. It watches poor Julia as she sleeps and leaves awful little notes around the house. I noticed the other day that it started taking knives out of the drawers at night and bringing them under the bed with it. That mother should really do something about keeping it under control. Perhaps you could help with that? Can't wait for your next correspondence. Fondly, Maggie. I couldn't breathe. I just sat, frozen, as Miss Leah screamed into the phone. Oh God, please tell me y'all are okay. Pick up the phone. Please, please pick up the phone. She decided to call 911. When the police got to my house, Miss Leah and I waited outside. They found my mom, my brother, my sister. They found them all over the house, lacerated into shreds of flesh. They couldn't determine how it happened, figured it was a wild animal or something. But Miss Leah and I knew how it happened. While we were waiting outside the house, we both looked up into my bedroom window. Standing there, in the room where I slept at night, was a black-eyed child with an evil grin that stretched ear to ear. It raised one long, sharp finger, probably 12 inches long, to its mouth as if to say silence. Mr. Lackavote. I'm not sure if this will help anyone, but if my story saves even one person from the nightmares I now endure, I will consider it a win. I have borrowed a phone that was smuggled in here, and the orderly that now monitors every move I make will be coming shortly, so I must be brief. A few days ago, I was laying in bed scrolling through Reddit, like I always do to make myself sleepy, when I came across this story that sent shivers up my spine. After I was done reading, I thought to myself, wow, that was terrifying, and then scrolled to the next one. Big mistake. 20 minutes later, I heard a scratching noise coming from my bedroom door and I froze. Confused, as I live alone, I turned on the lamp next to me and looked towards my bedroom door. Silence. After a moment, I decided it was my mind playing tricks on me. After all, I was reading scary stories in the dark. Probably not the best thing to do before bed, but hey, who doesn't love a good spine-chilling story before they close their eyes? I went back to scrolling through our sleep when again, I heard a long scratch on the door. I slowly got out of bed and tiptoed over to the noise. Grabbing the door handle, I gently opened it and peeked into my living room, only to find it vacant. I quietly closed the door and turned to walk back towards my bed, when my closet door flew open. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to fight or flight reaction, I seem to choose the option that leaves you frozen in place with your eyes closed. A defense mechanism instilled in me from childhood and stories of the boogeyman. After a moment, I decided to open my eyes and cautiously look towards my closet. I physically heard the clock that was placed on my nightstand stop ticking, and that's when I met him. He was almost 8 feet tall, standing on long spiny-looking legs, with impossibly long arms that seemed to stretch on forever. What I could see of his body looked to be covered in deep dark cracks. He was wearing a long hooded cloak that touched the floor, as black as midnight on a moonless night, that slightly revealed his ruby red eyes. "Who are you?" I said with a shaky voice. He never physically moved his mouth, but I heard him speak into my soul with the most sinister voice. "I am Mr. Lackavote, and I am here to right your wrong." Petrified, frozen in place, I tried to ask him what wrong I had done, but before I could finish he was right in front of me. His breath smelled of rotting flesh and death itself as he breathed down my face. He reached out and ran his long bony fingers across my cheek, and instantly I knew what he could do. I felt my eyes being ripped from my head and the burning sensation that followed. I began to scream, but no sound came out. I was stuck in my own personal hell as darkness surrounded me. Alone and afraid. I wanted to die. I wanted the agony to end. Again, I heard his voice as if it were my own thoughts. "I am the keeper of Votus. You know what you did. You will right your wrong, or I will take your eyes, along with your eternal soul. You have 24 hours. Just as fast as he had appeared, Mr. Lackavote had vanished. I did not sleep the rest of the night. I had visions of the horror I had just endured that left me sweating and cold at the same time. Had I dreamt the whole thing? Could my mind even make up something so sinister and evil? And the pain, oh Lord, the pain I felt. I have never experienced anything close to that kind of suffering in my entire life. The next morning, pacing my apartment, I tried my hardest to think of what I had done wrong. Did I forget to vote in our recent election? Had I missed an employee poll at work? What the hell had I not voted on that was so important that my soul depended on it? Trying to clear my head, I decided to open Reddit, as it always seemed to make me feel better and relaxed. While I was scrolling, I passed the story I had read the night before. The one that had made the hair on the back of my neck stand. That's when it clicked. I had scrolled to the next one before I gave that story the upvote it deserved. Instantaneously, I clicked on the up arrow and waited, hoping with every part of my being that was the answer. Was I playing a guessing game with my life? I waited the whole day. I didn't eat, I didn't move, I barely even breathed. I thought about writing to my family and sorting my goodbyes out, but I felt too incredibly empty to conjure up the words. No one would believe me anyways. As the sun slowly set, I decided I might as well wait in my room and hope that I had redeemed myself, or possibly chance losing my eyes and my soul. The thought of that alone made me vomit into the trash can next to my bed and tremble violently with deep, petrifying terror. When my 24-hour mark finally came, I closed my eyes, held my breath, and waited. Prayed. Begged that my soul would be saved and all would be forgiven. Silence. Then, I heard the breathing, I smelled the rotting flesh, I felt all the hair on my body raise. When I finally opened my eyes, I felt a chill that froze me to the bone, as if I was sitting inside a freezer meant for the dead. There he was, right in front of me. His eyes had turned to sapphires as he stared into my soul. "Don't let it happen again," he bellowed in a voice that to this day still haunts my dreams. Then he was gone. I know some of you won't believe me. Hell, I'm not even sure if I believe myself. As the doctor here says, it's all in my head. But, for the love of your eyeballs and your soul, do not forget to like this video or you too will have the pleasure of meeting Mr. Lackavote for yourself.